Hello everybody and welcome to the second episode of my series Women of Ancient History, which I have now discovered when abbreviated becomes WHOA! The purpose of this series is to create short historical profiles summarizing the lives of women who lived through our ancient history, who I believe deserve to be remembered more than they are. The usual disclaimer, I am not a historian in any way, just a nerd who really appreciates ancient history, and I really do my best to thoroughly research these topics. However, if there are any mistakes or you are someone with more expertise on topics than me, then feel free to correct anything or add any additional information down in the comments below. Last episode we discussed Hypatia of Alexandria, who had a significant impact on knowledge and scientific understanding in her time. Today we are learning about a woman who was a Greek queen who led a naval battle and was admired by Xerxes himself. That woman is Artemisia. Artemisia of Caria was born in 520 BC in the Greek city-state of Halicarnassus. She became queen of the Greek city-state as well as the surrounding city-states of Kos, Kalamenos, and Nissaros after the death of her husband, who was the former king, whose name is unknown. It's really crazy to think while in this Greek city-state of Halicarnassus, a woman was able to become queen, while when you're looking at a state like Athens, a woman wasn't allowed to leave the oikos without the accompaniment of a female slave. It really goes to show that while we refer to Greece as this whole big nation, the Hellenic region was actually very separate and independent. Our main source of information when it comes to Artemisia comes from Herodotus in his work The Histories, which depicts the battles within the Greco-Persian War. This does explain why most of the information we have on her is to do with her part in the Battle of Salamis and not her early life and her ascent to the throne, which I really wish we got to know more of because it would be so interesting. She's also depicted by Aristophanes in his play Lysistrata, which while it may not be a historical source as to say, it still does give a pretty decent understanding of how certain types of women were viewed in the Greek world. Before we continue with Artemisia, let me give a brief introduction to the Greco-Persian War for those who aren't familiar. Persia, giant empire by this point. This map shows all the places that were subject to the Persians, and as you can see, not all of Greece is subject to Persia. The Greek city-state of Ionia was under the Persians' rule, but they had a tyrannical dictator who they decided to uprise against. During the Ionian revolt, the Athenians decided to lend a hand to Ionia to help free them from the Persians. The Persians weren't happy with Athens for this. Persia decided they weren't just going to go after Athens, but right now they wanted all of Greece. And so began the Greco-Persian War. The most significant battles in this conflict were the Battle of Marathon, the Battle of Thermopylae, the Battle of Artemisium, the Battle of Salamis, the Battle of Plataea, and the Battle of Mycale. Today we're just going to be looking at the Battle of Salamis because that's the one that our girl Artemisia was a part of. Halicarnassus was a subject state to the Persians. Artemisia personally led the naval force and also advised Xerxes on naval strategies. Xerxes was the king of the Persians at this time. A really powerful man. When we think of a woman who was in charge of leading naval strategies in a battle, it's very easy to picture a warrior, especially when the most famous modern depiction of Artemisia comes from 300, Rise of an Empire, where she herself does fight in the battle and violently slashes and stabs at multiple Greeks and chops their heads off. Very little of what she does in that film is accurate. Artemisia actually advised Xerxes against having a naval battle and suggested that they fight the Peloponnese on the shore. She bluntly said that the rest of the Persian commanders, who were all from various nations, just weren't up to the challenge. Xerxes liked that she had her own opinion, but decided to stick with the advice of the majority. Which, considering the Persians lost the Battle of Salamis and also lost a lot of their naval force, maybe he should have listened to Artemisia. However, she earned even more admiration from Xerxes when she pulled off this very ambitious strategy during the battle. The Greeks already had a major advantage in this battle. The Greek triremes were more suited to the narrow strait of the area compared to the large Persian ships which didn't have enough room to turn without the open sea. The ship that Artemisia was on was being tailed by an Athenian ship, and she had nowhere to go. Her next move was a very ambitious one, as Herodotus says. Artemisia, however, I know, distinguished herself in such a way as raised her even higher than she stood before the esteem of the king. Another ship from the Persian fleet was beside Artemisia's ships, and to throw the Greeks off, she rammed into that ship that was on the same side of her and sunk it. Nobody survived. What this did was majorly confused the Greeks. They thought the ship must have been some kind of deserter, but whatever the situation, they clearly weren't on the Persian side if they were sinking a Persian ship. So the Greeks turned around and went to take down other Persian ships. If they hadn't known it was Artemisia, they never would have turned around. She had a bounty on her head by this point. In response to this, Herodotus describes Xerxes as saying, "My men have become women, and my women men," which is just such an awesome quote. Anytime a woman gets compared to a man in ancient history, instant compliment in my book. The Persians didn't win the Battle of Salamis, but it was still a pretty cool achievement on Artemisia's part. Artemisia gave further advice on what the Persians' next move should be. She advised that the Persians' commander Mardonius should stay and fight. For if they won that battle using Mardonius against the Greeks, it would be a victory for Persia. However, if they were to lose, Xerxes and his house would still remain and be safe. According to Herodotus, Xerxes was certainly pleased with her advice, as her words reflected his own thoughts exactly. For even if his advisors, male and female, counseled him to stay, I do not think he would have done, so thoroughly frightened he had become. It's really interesting to note that Xerxes definitely admires Artemisia's guts and intelligence. However, he's only willing to listen to her when her views align with his. All that we know of the end of Artemisia's life is that Xerxes sent her to Ephesus to take care of his illegitimate sons. And so that's what we know of the life of Artemisia. So how do we still remember her today? As mentioned earlier, Artemisia does feature in the film 300 Rise of an Empire, sequel to 300. I have not watched this entire film, but I did look up some scenes featuring Artemisia, and oh boy. The first 300 film is not entirely accurate and somewhat laughable at some points, considering the Spartans go to battle shirtless. But there are some scenes that genuinely take lines from sources and are based off the genuine historical facts. 300 Rise of an Empire looks worse. Every single scene I watched about Artemisia was just so wrong. They decide to give Artemisia a backstory. She watches her family die, I'm assuming it is, and is left in a Greek slave ship where she is implied to be raped, fulfilling the harmful trope that women can get strong by overcoming sexual trauma. Going through sexual assault does not make people stronger. That's a really harmful belief. She's picked up by some buff Persian and vows to come back and destroy the Greeks. No one tell her that she herself is a Greek. She spends the rest of her life training to become a murderer, and then becomes a murderer, handing the king of Persia the severed heads of the Greeks she's killed. And then she fights in the Battle of Salamis, killing Greek after Greek. I will acknowledge that as a character, 300's Artemisia is really badass and very cool, and she's played by Ava Green, so automatically very cool. But you could still have a badass woman who's true to history and honors the memory of the real woman who did live in this time and was a Greek queen. Am I the only one that finds that really cool? Artemisia really tends to be an afterthought. She's only really brought up when it comes to discussions of the Battle of Salamis or the Persian Wars. She's never really featured as her own subject. I understand this as we don't have an abundance of information about her. We have very little about her life. Still a Greek queen admired by Xerxes leading naval strategies. That's pretty damn cool. In conclusion, Artemisia was the Greek queen of Halicarnassus. She advised Xerxes, king of the Persians, on naval strategies during the Battle of Salamis, and earned his admiration through her bold naval strategies, taking out one of her own ships to save herself. She deserves to be remembered. Thank you very much for watching this video all about Artemisia. If you missed the first episode of this series all about Hypatia, you can check that out in the card above, and I will also feature it in the end screen. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like, and if you want to see more of the episodes of this series as well as the other content from my channel, you can hit subscribe, hit the bell to make sure that you don't miss it. The next episode is also going to be about a woman who was involved in the Greco-Persian Wars. If you're familiar with the conflict, you might be able to guess who it is. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye!